For Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Transport and asks, what impact, if any, will the outcome of the local government elections have on his priorities for transport funding?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, I don't see any significant change because the government is already investing in all modes so people can get around our major cities more effectively. This includes spending on roading infrastructure, rail infrastructure, larger subsidies for bus, rail and ferries, and so on. The government will continue and will work in partnership with the new councils on what comes next and will contribute its fair share to the continuing goal of improving commuter transport. Mayors and councillors will need to work out how much ratepayers are prepared to contribute to accelerating new projects and consider not just the capital costs and, of course, the operating costs. I'm very pleased to see the newly elected councils sharing this government's vision for investing in improved road and rail services.
Dr. Russel Norman.
Speaker, to the Minister of Transport, now that Auckland has spoken in one voice very clearly about their preference for new rail projects over new motorways, will he respond positively to this one voice by shifting funding from motorways into rail?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure that's exactly what they said, but nevertheless, they are, of course, very keen to see transport improved in Auckland, and the government is investing currently around $5 billion in transport in Auckland, with $3.4 billion on roading and about $1.6 billion on rail. So roughly about 32% of our investment is on rail currently, and of course, although it's growing, rail represents about 2% of passenger trips to and from work each day in Auckland currently. So there's got to be some proportionate amount to that.
Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will he consider reprioritising his transport funding by moving money from his holiday highway into a rail CBD loop, given that the costs are about the same and given that a large majority of Aucklanders clearly want rail more than they want his new motorway?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, a couple of points there. Firstly, the Puhoi to Wellsford motorway is in fact a multi-regional project between Northland and Auckland. It's not just an Auckland project. The second point I have to point out to the member is that, again, we are spending big sums in the rail area, and I think that's appropriate. But I should point out to him, as I have, I think, once in the past, just to keep a matter of proportion, that particular road, Puhoi to Warkworth, currently carries more people per day than the whole of the Auckland commuter rail network. So just to get some form of proportion in that project. And of course, we also have very large amounts of freight carried on that highway as well. So it's all about making investments right across the network, and each investment has to be considered on its merits.
Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Why is he pouring $1.7 billion into the Puhoi to Wellsford Holiday Highway when only 8.4% of Aucklanders picked it as the most important transport priority in a recent Herald Digipoll, whereas about 50% of Aucklanders picked rail projects as the most important transport priority in the same poll?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, I would point out that project and other projects are funded out of a thing called the National Land Transport Fund, not the Central Auckland Land Transport Fund or the Auckland Land Transport Funds. That's very important because by the same argument you could say, why would we be spending money on, for example, roading projects in Christchurch or perhaps near Wellington or perhaps in other parts of the country, because Aucklanders want all this over here. So the important thing again is to invest right across our transport sector, and the government is actually investing huge sums of money in rail, not just in Auckland but also in Wellington and in the turnaround plan for Kiwi Rail, and I think we have to work on developing all modes.
Dr. Russel Norman.
Why is he taking the taxes from Aucklanders and spending them on motorway projects that Aucklanders do not prioritise, rather than spending those taxes on the transport projects, particularly rail, that Aucklanders have spoken over and over again they see as the main priorities for their city to reduce congestion in Auckland?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the other thing I should point out is that the National Land Transport Fund and the road taxes and road user charges that are used to create that fund are actually hypothecated for road users, which was something that was set up by the previous government, which that member was a part of. So that funding is for the benefit of road users. It comes from road users.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order, Dr. Russel.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister has said that I was a part of the previous government. That is simply not true.
There are other ways. If the member wishes to make a personal explanation, he can do that, but he can't question the minister's right or wrong. He can't question the minister's answer by way of a point of order. I believe the minister had finished his answer. Does Dr. Russel Norman wish to ask another supplementary?
Mr. Speaker, is he effectively telling Aucklanders who voted in overwhelming numbers for the rapid expansion of rail throughout their region that their votes are worth less than the large financial donations from the Road Transport Forum?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, I completely reject the assertion, the grubby assertion made by the member in relation to that matter. What I will say, again, is that we are investing very, very strongly in both rail and in road, $3.4 billion in highways in Auckland and $1.6 billion in rail transport. And naturally, of course, we are prepared to look at further projects over time. But it is important not just to ensure that the current projects are completed, and there's a considerable period of time before they are, but also to make sure the operating costs of those projects are met. And frankly, that hasn't been done yet either. And we will need Auckland to work with the government to ensure that we meet the operating costs of that investment that's already in place.
The Honourable Darren Hughes.
Mr. Speaker, does the fact that 12 of the new 20-member Auckland Council yesterday pledged support for the CBD tunnel loop mean he is now prepared to get beyond his dismissive comments of the past when he was supporting John Banks for the mayoralty and agree that Aucklanders want improved public transport, such as the loop and the line to the airport in Albany?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, I do struggle with that member's comments coming from the party that was going to sock Auckland with a large regional fuel tax to pay for those projects, when this government has actually invested very large amounts in the electrification of rail and the electric trains in Auckland. The electrification of rail and the electric trains were appropriated by this government last year, in fact. So the important thing is, Mr. Speaker, that yes, there will be further projects over time. The main thing is that we do understand the cost of those projects and make the decisions in an appropriate time frame. And I'm looking forward to having those discussions with the new Mayor and the Auckland Council.
Question number 5, the Honourable Marion Street.
Thank you.